amazing. Just one brief illustration. I was working with this man many years ago who was DID, and we were there working, and all of a sudden on his arm, a bright red cross appeared, and it was like it was burnt, and it was raised right off of his skin. And he says, "What is that?" And of course, back then I didn't know what was going on at the time. But now looking back, I would have asked the question, well, body, and I just use that as kind of a way to get in past the defenses. Let's go back to the event when that first happened. Let's look at the event or experience when you first saw that cross. And what would have happened, he would have gone back maybe to a child or even an infant where that was burnt in. And so as an adult, when that memory came forward, it was representative of an event that happened many years ago, but it actually raised. You could see the cross and as a large welt, and it was red. It was right in his arm. He didn't know what it was. Now, knowing what I know now, I could have accessed that memory and gone back and released that part of him, which may have been very, very young in a very traumatic ritual.
Well, okay, here's an interesting question. Okay, let's say you get somebody that does change their DNA, to become more powerful in different things. Okay, let's say they switch back and forth. Let's take the scenario of the TV show The Incredible Hulk. Could that happen?
Maybe not to the degree of the extreme change in the Incredible Hulk from one person to another, but I have seen people make a drastic change from someone who's normally very passive when a genetically engineered evil entity took over their body. Then they transform and become physically violent and aggressive. And that's called, by the way, a doppelganger, which is a German word for evil twin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Barry, I think for our listeners, if you try to categorize this, a lot of what you're hearing, you're not, if you don't have the experience of dealing with trauma as well as the very high level demonization that is often incorporated into the history of a survivor of trauma, it's hard to conceptualize this. But it's not an either-or situation with especially those who are generational satanic ritual abuse and DID. So what happens is that the trauma and the protocols of applying different trauma, strapping them to a table using electroshock, all kinds of various kinds of stimulation, hot and cold, pain and pleasure, just massive fragmentation. At the same time, they are channeling in spirits into the person's traumatic experience where their identity is splitting, they're open, and the principalities and powers and even demons themselves, but I think principalities are at a higher level, they're coming in and they're restructuring their identity. So when a person begins to work with a person with this kind of history, you have to have an experience of how to work and relate to this. And the best way, I get requests all the time from people that are starting to work with this. Doug, when are you going to write a book on this? And I tell people, you cannot write a book that is adequate to training a person to work with this. It takes mentoring. It would be just like a doctor, an MD, who goes to school for 8 years and learns all the theory and everything about anatomy and various procedures in terms of his medical practice. Does he immediately go into practice? No, he has a 4-year internship. And I now see that those that I have trained that are becoming more and more efficient, successful, is because they've set in with hours with me, or I've set in with their clients, their people are working with, and it's been gradually transferred as they see with their eyes the dynamics of what it means to go in and release a person's identity from their trauma and dissociation and clear off the demonic infestation. But there's no book that can tell you how this is done or even fully describe it. You have to see it, and not everyone is called to this. But when you see it, that's when you know it's real. And of course, Preston has been involved with this since 1983, and it's common information, because we have a whole history of seeing and doing work, spending thousands of hours of working with many different people. And there's no way you can communicate that to those that don't know, have never seen this, or have ever been involved.
How was this back in 1800s and 1700s? Were we still dealing with the same thing, or is it worse now?
It's far worse now than it has ever been. What happened during World War II? Dr. Joseph Mengele did experiments on 100,000 people and killed them, mainly twins. After World War II, the Nuremberg trials said that Dr. Joseph Mengele is personally responsible for killing 100,000 people. What he would do is, with one of the twins, he would put glass in an organ or some disease in an organ and sew them back up. And then when they died from this induced outside disease or object, then he would immediately kill the identical twin and compare the organs. So he would freeze people to death, see how long it took for a person to drown, for a person to be frozen to death. I've been to the Holocaust Museum and seen actual photographs of these events. I've been to the concentration camp in Dachau, and I've seen the ovens for people who say the Holocaust did not exist. There was actually hundreds of concentration camps in Nazi Germany. So he learned the extremes of how to traumatize people. So since World War II, through the evil engineering and information that Joseph Mengele discovered, that he's learned how to extremely traumatize the human soul, and the mind is a part of the soul, to create severe trauma and disassociation in these people. And I'm sure Doug would verify this, but many of the people that we have counseled in highly programmed dissociative identity disorder caused by satanic ritual abuse, we will see the concepts of the programming done by Joseph Mengele.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's very significant. Those that would like to follow up on this, if you go to the Byte Show and just under guests, you can click on my name, Douglas Riggs. If you go in there, I have 2 audio files on remembering Dr. Joseph Mengele. And in there, I interview some of the ladies that were personally programmed by him in conjunction with Dr. John Bowlby, Bowlby, Dr. John Bowlby. But I have an article here, which I'll be happy to send anyone that would like to read it. It's called Monarch Mind Control. I'm going to quote this and following up what Preston had to say. Quote, Dr. Joseph Mengele of Auschwitz, notoriety, was the principal developer of trauma-based mind control project and the CIA's MK Ultra mind control programs. Mengele and approximately 5,000 other high-ranking Nazis were secretly moved into the United States and South America in the aftermath of World War II in an operation designated Paperclip. The Nazis continued their work in developing mind control and rocketry technologies in secret underground military bases. The only thing we were told about was the rocketry work with the former Nazi star celebrities like Werner von Braun, the killers, torturers, and mutilators of innocent human beings were kept discreetly out of sight, but busy in U.S. underground military facilities, which gradually became home to thousands upon thousands of kidnapped American children snatched off the streets, parentheses, about 1 million per year, and placed into iron bar cages stacked from floor to ceiling as a part of the quote-unquote training. These children would be used to further refine and perfect Mengele's mind control technologies. Certain selected children, parentheses, at least the ones who survived the training, unquote, would become future mind-controlled slaves who could be used for thousands of different jobs, ranging anywhere from sexual slavery to assassinations. A substantial portion of these children who were considered expendable were intentionally slaughtered in front of and by the other children in order to traumatize the selected trainee into total compliance and submission. I have the complete article on this if people are interested.
Well, this leads into the question of what is the difference between pre-programmed super soldiers and high-level generational SRA DID role and the function in the New World Order?
Go ahead, Preston. Go ahead, Preston.
Yes, the super soldiers are often hybrids that are bred because they hate humans and they want to torment and kill humans. There's many different type of nephilim hybrid soldiers that will be used as soldiers. What that is it is people to be soldiers of what's called the Fourth Reich. At the end of World War II, Nazis in Germany were already planning for the revival of a Fourth Reich and the Fourth Reich soldiers. But high-level generational SRADID, there are people in the New World Order that are what's called transgenerational Satanists, that from generation to generation, from the time they're born, they're programmed to carry out specific functions for the Antichrist and the New World Order. Most Christians are aware that the book of Revelation and 2 Thessalonians talk about the Antichrist. But there has to be an organization behind the Antichrist to prepare the way. And that is what most people generically refer to as the New World Order. So members of the New World Order for years have been programmed to carry out their task since they were born, whether, as Doug had said previously, whether it's for assassinating certain people or for other tasks, working in the governments of some country, working within the military, or in private enterprise, or working as aerospace engineers or designer for projects that will aid the New World Order. There are people, for example, who are in NASA who are really programmed people in the New World Order to scientifically develop projects that advance the preparation for the coming of the Antichrist.
And just as a follow-up on that is, I think to re-emphasize the super soldiers, and Russ Dizdar has done a great work on his book, The Black Awakening. These super soldiers, for the most part, are people who have been abused. They are expendable. They are fully human, that he reports in this book. They've been programmed to carry out a particular agenda For example, the shooters that we see, Virginia Tech, the Laughlin, and Arizona, there's others.